Kris Fenton is president and founder of IT Squared Resource Inc., a team of technology professionals dedicated to delivering the solutions, security, and support necessary for growth-oriented SMBs to achieve exceptional results. Before starting her firm, Kris spent nearly 10 years in various sales and management roles with both regional and national telecommunications carriers, where she and her teams were constantly among the top 5% producers. Recognizing a market need for reliable IT and telecom management for small and medium businesses, Kris set up shop in 1999 to provide dependable technology solutions and long-term support for SMBs in Southwest Ohio. Team IT Squared's commitment to delivering exceptional results through right-fit tech solutions, security and management, topped with the best-in-class client care, has earned them long-term roles as the trusted resource to several of the Southwest Ohio's top organizations and businesses in the government, healthcare, financial, and energy fields. Kris, if you're ready, I'll hand it on over to you.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Well, welcome, everybody. I'm honored to be here today and want to thank the TAB organization and my TAB coach, Bob Hodum, for the opportunity to share this information on a broader scale. As Alex said, my firm, IT Squared, is an IT and telecom management firm. We're located in Southwest Ohio, just between Dayton and Cincinnati. And we've been servicing businesses throughout the greater Dayton and northern Cincinnati area since 1999. And really, we're here to give them solid, secure solutions and a reliable team of technology professionals to help guide them through and manage the many complexities that technology brings with it today. Our guiding philosophy here at IT Squared is to add value to all those that we serve. And today we are serving all of you that have joined us. And our aim is to arm you with the information and knowledge needed to be a well-informed buyer of IT support services. This is a service model business. And as we all know, just because two companies are offering the same services, what the buyer gets from one versus the other can be vastly different. And this, we have a lot of content to cover today. This usually takes about an hour and a half to get through, so I'm going to move quickly. So let's jump right in here. Our slide's not advancing. Bear with me here. There we go. Okay, so here's what we're going to cover today. And the three most common ways that IT service companies charge for their services and the pros and cons of each approach. The common billing models that could put all the risk on you, the customer, when buying IT services, some exclusions and hidden fees and other gotchas that you want to be aware of and look for when you're reviewing contracts and talking to different service providers, and how to make sure that you know exactly what you're getting to avoid any disappointment and frustration as you move in and through the relationship. And lastly, originally we said 21 questions, but bonus today, you're going to get 22 revealing questions to ask your IT support firm before giving them access to your computer network, your email, or your data. So what is IT? Information technology. This is the use of systems, especially computers and telecommunications, for storing, retrieving, and sending information. And so when we think of an IT budget, this should encompass all things: the systems, the software, the services, and the support necessary to do three things: run, grow, and innovate our businesses. So let's break each one of these down. So regardless of the type of business, there are core and support functions. The better we can collaborate and integrate across these functions, the more positive the impacts across the entire business, culture included. And that's a little bit of a side note. Tech impact on culture is a whole other webinar in and of itself. And there are numerous studies out there indicating that it has a significant impact on the quality of talent that we attract and retain. Examples of a run budget item would include things like mission critical server replacements, key software upgrades, and personnel costs that are maybe associated with administering and maintaining the IT infrastructure on a day-to-day basis. And organizations that have to trim IT budgets should avoid cutting the run initiatives, because these are essentially the things that keep the lights on, so to speak. But such cuts would introduce, obviously, operational risk. On the growth side, it's certainly no secret that many of today's small business owners are experimenting with different tools and strategies in hopes of increasing their revenue and overall success. The development of modern technology gives small businesses the opportunity to develop low-cost, enterprise-quality products and services. Some of these on the slide here are some of the prevalent and upcoming trends that are helping small businesses achieve big growth today. A growth budget items are those that help you introduce new capabilities or improve existing ones. Grow initiatives could include the implementation of a new software that makes operations more efficient, the purchase of a new firewall that provides additional protections from cyber threats, or an upgrade of your website that improves prospective and current customers, improves interaction with those folks. Grow budget items should tie directly to your strategic initiatives, and grow initiatives usually are not as mission critical as run initiatives and often have some time flexibility, which means that they're good candidates for starting early when additional cash is available, or for deferral if cash is a little bit tight. When we talk about transformation of your business, here we have countless examples in just the past few years of companies doing this. Airbnb has upended the hotel industry, Uber, the taxi industry, Netflix, the video rental industry. And emerging tech trends are opening up new ways of meeting market needs. Upstarts are totally disrupting markets. And the question is, are you allocating budget towards the R&D that leads to transformative action in your business? Finding ways to incorporate as many of the 6 key areas that you see here on the slide are proving to be a formula for success. The transform budget items are, again, research and development type activities. These initiatives might seek to identify, for example, the right technologies for new organizational capabilities, fundamental changes to the business process, or a new product or service offering. Examples of transform initiatives include proof of concept, prototypes, and small-scale testing of new systems or business applications. When finances are tight, transform initiatives often are the first to be cut or deferred, unless they are associated with key strategic initiatives that the organization views as essential to its continued operation. So this next slide will give us an industry look, a by industry look at what portion of the IT budget that small businesses are allocating to each of these 3 areas. And as you can see, this falls right in line. Fundamentals first, then growth, then transformation. And regardless of the industry, the swing by percentage that you see here allocated is not vastly different through the middle. On this next slide, we're going to see how much and what percentage of top line revenue that companies are allocating towards IT as a whole. And again, this list is by industry. But before we show this next slide, I'd like to take a quick poll. Alex is going to pop up the poll, and if you'll take a few moments and just respond to this, we'll see where everybody falls. Alex, did the poll pop up here? I'm not seeing it on my end.
Yes, it did pop up, and we're getting a lot of participation.
Excellent. Okay, we'll give you just another moment here.
All right, the poll's closed.
Okay, excellent. And as an overall, I'm not seeing that, Alex, but.
So 60% of the people that voted said I do not have a budget for IT, or they use less than 1%. So
Okay.
that was the majority of them. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see where we fall here. Okay, and this here is research from 2014. These percentages have ticked up in some sense. Then small businesses are embracing the power of technology, and with the rise of cyber threats, businesses are investing more into cybersecurity and disaster recovery. And today, the cross-industry average has ticked up to about 3.8%. But depending on what industry you're in, you can see where your peers, what the amount of top-line revenue they are allocating towards IT spend. And here we take a little bit deeper look into this, and where we can see what the actual initiatives are within that IT spend. Improving efficiencies and business processes, and increasing productivity through better technology, and along with network security and backup and disaster recovery remain top priorities even today in 2018. And here, Alex, we have a second poll that we're going to go ahead and share. And what we would like to just understand is this question here: are you currently leveraging technology as a strategic advantage? Let's give just another moment.
All right, the poll is closed.
All right, how are our results there?
75% say yes and 25% say no.
Excellent. We know your participation in TAB is doing well if you've got some focus on technology, because that's one of the core functions in TAB, is to help us learn how to leverage that. So outstanding. All right. So this is a statement that I hear often from prospective clients that are frustrated. The owner's spending too much time managing IT issues, or has staff that was hired for other roles doing bits and pieces of the IT, but they have little control and don't know the true state of the IT environment. They know that they need stable, well-performing systems in order to run, grow, and innovate in their business, but all the different facets of IT feels like a whole other business in and of itself. The first thought for many is, should I just hire a full-time IT manager? And in most cases, it's not cost-effective for companies under 100 employees to hire a full-time IT person, simply because you can outsource this function of your business far cheaper than you can, or far cheaper and with a lot less work. And that brings us to the outsourcing options. Before you can accurately compare the fees, services, and deliverables of one IT service company to another, you need to understand the three predominant service models most of these companies fit within. Some companies offer a blend of all three, while others are strict about offering only one service plan. So what are these three? These three, here we have time and materials, or on demand. Sometimes this is called on demand, or better known inside the industry as break fix. You have the managed services, managed IT services model, and then you have software vendor supplied IT services. Let's take a quick look at each. So from the time and materials side of the house, in the industry, again, we call this break fix services. Essentially, you pay an agreed upon hourly rate for a technician to fix your problems when something breaks. Under this model, you might be able to negotiate a discount based on buying a block of service hours. The scope of work may be simply to resolve a specific problem, like removing a virus, or it may encompass a large project like a computer network upgrade, or a move that has a specific result and an end date clarified. Some companies will offer staff augmentation as well and placement under this model. From an industry perspective, the biggest reason it's becoming harder to find service providers under this relationship is because it's completely reactive. And we know the phone will ring, we just don't know when it's going to ring. And when it does, it's almost always an emergency. And this makes it very difficult to keep good engineers on staff, because the engineers know that 98% of these problems could be prevented with the proper maintenance and management. And just a quick story, I just had a call yesterday. I had a call with a prospective client here in our area. It was a small CNC shop with 25 employees. The office manager explained that they had different people supporting them over the last 5 years, and some as a side gig that would only help after they get off from their real job. And then they tried to hire someone internal for a dual role of IT support and a safety manager. They ultimately let the person go because, as she put it, they didn't really know what they were doing on the IT side. And then they've been through a couple of IT support firms that took them on as a break-fix client. But essentially what they're experiencing is these folks ended up putting them at the bottom of the priority list from their managed clients. And the reason they called us is because their main software application keeps locking up because the database is filling up on hard drive space on what she said was a new server, and the current company stopped returning their calls. So when I offered to send a tech out to solve the immediate issue and then do a baseline network assessment in order to give them a quote for a managed plan that would prevent, obviously, this from happening ever again and provide them with a reliable, responsive support, she said that the owner really only wants to pay as needed arrangement. So I sent her a nice email with a link to this webinar to pass along to the owner, and I hope that they're attending today. On the managed services side, this is a model where the IT service company takes the role of your IT department and not only installs and supports all the devices and PCs that connect to your servers, but also offers phone and on-site support. There's a lot of software and back-end systems that come along with that, things like antivirus, security software, backup, and a host of other services to monitor and maintain the health, speed, performance, and security of your computer network. In many software companies, as you know, most of us have a primary line of business application, and many of the software companies will offer some level of IT support for their customers in the form of help desk or remote support for an additional fee. However, these are typically scaled back services limited to troubleshooting their specific application and not your entire computer network and all of the applications and devices connected to it. If your problem resides outside of their specific software or the server it's hosted on, they can't help you and will often refer you to your IT department. While it's often a good idea to buy some basic level of support package with critical software applications that you use to run your business, this is not enough to provide the full scope of IT services and support that most businesses need to stay up and running. And when looking to outsource your IT support, the two service models that you're most likely to end up having to choose between are the managed IT services and the break-fix model. So let's take a deeper dive into the pros and cons of each of these options and then the typical fee structure for both. So managed IT versus break-fix, which is better or more cost-effective option? You probably heard the famous Benjamin Franklin quote, "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure," and I personally couldn't agree more, and that's why it's my sincere belief that the managed IT approach is by far the most cost-effective, smartest option for any small business. The only time that I would recommend a time and materials approach is when you already have a competent IT person or team proactively managing your computer network and simply have a specific IT project to complete your current that your current in-house folks or current support arrangement isn't able to support, or they don't have the expertise or the time for the implementation. Something such as a network upgrade, installing a backup solution, or next generation network firewalls and security solutions. Outside of that specific scenario, I don't think that the break-fix approach is a good idea for general IT support for one very important fundamental reason, and you ultimately end up paying for a pound of cure for problems that could have easily been avoided with an ounce of prevention. And the fact of the matter is that computer networks absolutely, positively need ongoing maintenance and monitoring to stay secure and running properly. The ever-increasing dependency that we have on these systems and the data that they hold, not to mention the type of data that we're saving digitally, has given rise to very smart and sophisticated cybercrime organizations who work around the clock to do only one thing: compromise your networks for illegal activities. In most cases, their intent is to access financial information and passwords to rob you or your clients, or create fake identities for credit card fraud. And in other cases, they may want to use your computer network to send illegal spam, host pirated software, or spread viruses. And some do this just for the fun of it, the fun of being able to make computer systems inoperable. These criminals work around the clock in teams, constantly finding and inventing new ways to get around antivirus software and firewalls, and that's why you have to remain ever vigilant against their attacks. And of course, this doesn't even take into consideration the common disasters that, such as rogue employees, lost devices, hardware failures, which, as you can see here, this is the #1 reason for data loss. And of course, there's fire and natural disasters and a host of other issues that can interrupt or outright destroy your infrastructure and the data that it holds. And then we have regulatory compliance. For any business that's hosting or touching credit card or financial information, medical records, or even client contact information, such as email addresses. Today, 47 out of the 50 states have enacted laws requiring businesses to notify anyone whose personally identifiable information that is in their care has potentially been compromised. And when it's considered PII in many states, and what is considered PII in many states is as simple as an email address. Each state is different, so you want to check the laws in your state so that you know what you need to protect. But several have brought the number of records that require public notification requirements, meaning a local news announcement, newspaper ads, and even billboards in some cases, down to just 500 records. And if you think about your own business and how many records you have, client records you have, and the type of information that you're storing, this is important to know how you're protecting that. Top all of that off, if it's determined that you haven't taken what's considered reasonable measures to protect this information, you may be facing added legal costs and fines from the FTC. Personally identifiable information, PII, or sensitive personal information, SPI, as it's used in information security and privacy laws, is information that can be used on its own or with information to identify, contact, or locate a single person, or to identify an individual in context. Just to give you a little understanding of what is considered PII and SPI. So these are all certainly compelling reasons for network monitoring. Preventing these problems and keeping your systems secure and up and running, which is what managed services is all about, is a lot less expensive and damaging to your organization than waiting until one of these things happens and then paying for emergency IT services and any associated cleanup expense. Remote monitoring and management software is the foundational tool for any IT service provider, and if they don't have it, absolutely do not hire them. So again, should you hire a full-time IT manager? As I noted earlier, in most cases, it just doesn't make financial sense for a company to do this. Because again, you can outsource this function of your business for far cheaper with a lot less work. Not only do you need to find someone with the proper skill sets and experience to manage the various systems, then you have costs for the related support systems to effectively monitor, manage, and secure these platforms and your data. And what happens when that one person goes on vacation or they get sick? As you can see here, the cost difference is pretty significant. And this really just takes into account, the example you're seeing here really takes into account the overall salary and full burden costs from an in-house perspective. So under the break-fix model, there's a fundamental conflict of interest between you and the IT firm. The IT services company has no incentive to stabilize your computer network or to resolve problems quickly, because they're getting paid by the hour. Therefore, the risk of unforeseen circumstances, scope creep, learning curve, inefficiencies, and outright sometimes incompetence are shifted to you, the customer. Especially the more problems you have, or essentially the more problems that you have, the more that they're going to profit, which is precisely what you don't want. Under this model, an IT consultant can take the liberty of assigning junior, lower paid technicians to work on your problems who may take extra time to get the problems resolved. rather than sending out a more senior, more expensive technicians that will have it resolved in a fraction of the time. There's no incentive to properly manage the time of the technicians or their efficiency, and there's every reason for them to prolong the project and find more problems than solutions. Of course, if they're ethical and want to keep you as a client, they should be doing everything possible to resolve your problems quickly and efficiently. And however, that's akin to putting a German Shepherd in charge of watching over the ham sandwich, which isn't always a good idea. But don't get me wrong, I believe that the vast majority of IT folks are ethical and will work hard to do their very best for you. The harsh reality is that if they're trying to grow and be proactive in their business, they'll have to make a tough decision when it comes between servicing a break-fix client and their clients that value the proactive approach. And finally, it makes budgeting for IT projects and expenses a nightmare, since one month you may have no costs and the next month it may be several $1,000s because things blew up and there's a bunch of emergency time spent to get you back up and running. Okay, so let's look at some actual pricing. Show me the money here. The following price quotes are based on a recent IT industry survey conducted by a marketing firm out of Nashville of over 750 different IT services firms across the U.S. And the rates, these rates will give you a general idea of what most IT services firms charge, and to help you understand the vast differences in service contracts that you must be aware of before signing on the dotted line. And before we jump into, oh, we're not quite there yet. We have one more poll, but we'll be there in a few moments. Okay, hourly break-fix fees. Most IT services companies selling break-fix services charge between $135 and $225 per hour with a 1-hour minimum. In most cases, they'll give you a discount of 5 to as much as 20% off their hourly rates if you purchase a prepaid block of hours. If they're quoting a project, the fees are going to range widely based on the scope of the work outline. If you're hiring an IT consulting firm for a project, I would suggest that you demand the following: a very detailed scope of work that specifies what success is. Ideally, they're going to ask you this question, so that you have some dialogue around what mutually you set the mutual expectations of what success looks like for your projects. They're clearly outlining this in their statement of work. If they don't open the door for this conversation, especially on a larger project, make sure that you bring this up. Make sure you detail what your expectations are in the performance, the workflow, the cost, and the security and the access. And the more detailed that you can be, the better, obviously. And detailing your expectations up front will go a long way in avoiding miscommunication and additional fees later on. A fixed budget and a time frame to complete. This is very important. Agreeing to this up front aligns both your agenda and the consultant. So be very wary of loose estimates that allow the consultant firm to bill you for unforeseen circumstances. The bottom line is that it's really the IT consultant's firm's responsibility to be able to accurately assess your situation and quote a project based on their experience. You should not have to pick up the tab for a consultant underestimating a job for their inefficiencies. And a true professional is going to know how to take into consideration those contingencies that bill accordingly. If there are legitimate contingencies and there's an understanding that there could be some unforeseen things, they should be able to bullet out what they would anticipate that to be, and then you have clearly defined how that's going to be handled in the contract. And lastly, I would really recommend that you get a not to exceed rate. A lot of people don't want to do this, but what it does is it forces the consultant to really do their due diligence up front before they get into a project and uncover, really anticipate and verify what the full project is going to look like. On the managed services side, most managed service IT firms will quote you a monthly fee based on the number of devices and or users that they need to maintain, the backup and support. that it's going to take to, again, be able to protect your data and support all of your users. In our region, this fee is somewhere between in the range of $285 to $425 per server and $85 to $175 per desktop or user combination, and approximately $15 per month additional if they're doing mobile device management. If you hire an IT consultant and sign up for a managed service contract, here are some of the things that should be included in really the base package. And what you'll see, in most cases, you're going to see folks have a tiered plan so that there are base fundamental services that they're going to provide, and then there's some additionals that they can add on to that. So here, security patches applied weekly, if not daily, for urgent and emerging threats. The antivirus updates and monitoring, firewall updates and monitoring, backup monitoring and test restores. This is critical. Spam filtering for your email with updates, spyware detection and removal, monitoring disk space on workstations and servers. This was the example that we had yesterday with the prospect that I spoke with. Simple monitoring would have prevented that from ever being a problem to begin with. Optimizing systems for maximum speed, documentation of your network setup, software and hardware. Make it simple, add moves and changes for users coming onto the network or leaving your organization or changing roles. And at least annually doing a periodic review where they're sitting down and they're talking with you about what your business objectives are so that they can advise on what technology changes may be needed to for you to achieve those objectives. So no, the following services here may not be included. Usually they're offered in a higher tier plan and or if they're not in your base plan, they will be clearly defined as additional within your contract. And this is not necessarily a scam or unethical unless the managed service company tries to hide these fees when they're selling you a service agreement. Make sure that you review your contract carefully to know what is and is not included. Hardware such as new servers, PCs, laptops, firewalls, the disaster recovery part of the service. So a backup is not just a backup. What happens, how are things going to be handled if they're just helping you restore say just a local file from on-site? Somebody accidentally deletes a file, great, okay, how is that going to be handled? Is that included? Or, hey, we just had a major catastrophic server failure and we need to be back up and running. Is that service and the software and the hardware and everything included in your plan that's going to make that happen? Some software licenses, it's very common now to see Office 365 and some applications such as QuickBooks included in a managed service contract. Annual budgets, the budgeting process for your system replacements and upgrades. On-site support, naturally, you'll see some contracts will say we'll only do remote support and then you're charged for on-site. We highly recommend that you go with a plan that includes the on-site support. Those hours can add up quickly, and it's something that can very quickly push you outside of your budget. After-hours support, here from a monitoring and management perspective, there are things that need to happen to the systems and the network outside of regular business hours so it doesn't disrupt normal business flow. And if that's not included, that's going to be an automatic upcharge every single month outside of your contract. And vendor liaison services, such as working with your internet service provider, your telco, and your software vendors. Here again, it just makes life easier for you as a business to say, hey, I'm having an internet service problem, and you know that the IT company, they should be part of your team and know your business well enough and have all the information so that they can contact the internet service provider. There's very often, if you've made these calls yourself, very often the ISP will try to push back and say it's something internal. And so you go to this back and forth of, no, it's not internal, it's on the outside of the network. And your IT services company should be able to help cut through all of that and really push to a much faster resolution for you. Then there's some gray areas in all-inclusive service contracts that you want to watch out for. You really want to know what is and isn't included here. to truly compare, it needs to be clear for you, so the edges of everything are very clear for everybody. It's very easy for one IT service provider to appear far less expensive than another until you look closely at what you're getting. The service level agreements, that should clearly state response times and equipment replacement if the equipment is provided as part of the plan. As an example, a firewall or a backup and disaster recovery server. These are commonly supplied, again, by the managed services provider. And again, you want to know what happens if they fail to deliver. They should really have something in their contract that says, this is not only our service level agreement and what we're committing to, but if we fail to do this, this is what you're going to get back. And to note, you'll see a section in the contract that defines your responsibilities as the client. These are usually around things such as providing reasonable access to your facilities, timely payment, agreement to replace aged hardware that is underperforming and causing chronic repair calls, or software that's no longer supported and putting your business at risk if it fails. Business is a two-way street, and if the provider feels that they're taking on a much higher risk than reward, they'll likely execute on a termination clause. My best advice here is the moment that you feel that things are getting off track, you have a conversation and ask them to help you understand where things got off track. Hopefully they'll turn that question around to understand your perspective. And if they're defensive and pointing fingers everywhere else, my best advice here is let them go as fast as you can. There are plenty of professional firms out there that will take responsibility, fix their issue, and grow from the experience. And lastly, we put together, again, not 21, but you get a bonus today, 22 questions that will help you find a solid and reliable professional IT support firm to help you achieve your goals. And Alex, this is our last poll. I'd like to have you go ahead and show that for the audience. And we'll take just a minute to let everybody respond. Okay, well, I'm hopeful that everybody out there feels wonderful about where they're at today, and if they don't, we're helping arm you with some information that you can go find a right fit for your company.
And the polls have been closed.
All right, excellent. Okay, moving along here. One other quick note about this is, well, we'll get to that in just a moment. I'm jumping ahead of myself here. So 22 service clarifying questions that you should ask your IT services firm before signing a contract. We'll run through these real quick, and I'll give you kind of the background of what you should be looking for here on each one of these questions. And as Alex noted, you're going to get a copy of the presentation, so you will get the checklist that we went over just a few minutes ago and a copy of all of these questions as well. So number one, do they answer their phones live, or do you always have to leave a voicemail and wait for someone to call you back? We highly recommend only working with a company that answers their phones live Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, with some rare exceptions, maybe if they're in a team meeting. But this gives you an emergency after hours number that you can reach somebody if you have a problem. And the biggest reason that we recommend this is what we experience ourselves is, many of the CEOs and executives that we work with, they work outside of normal business hours, and they find it the most productive time that they have. And if they can't access their computer, if they have a problem and they can't get a hold of anyone, it's incredibly frustrating. Number 2, do they offer a written guaranteed response time to your calls? Here, again, it's all about expectation. You should expect to have a technician working on a problem within 60 minutes or less of your call. Again, the response times for emergency and standard service requests should be clearly defined in your contract. There should be a financial penalty for not meeting the response guarantee. And as an example, if we fail to meet our guaranteed emergency response, our clients get a free month. And you can bet that we've never failed to meet that response guarantee. How do they measure client satisfaction, and what is the current overall company rating and of just the company and the support personnel rating? We really feel that this is fundamental for really any business, that we should all be measuring client satisfaction and net promoter scores to know how we're doing and make adjustments where necessary. This is something that really should be done consistently, and there are countless options out there that make this a very simple and effective process. For us, it's built right into our ticketing system. We use an after support survey that's auto-generated at the close of every ticket. We don't inundate our folks with surveys continuously. We've set it up so that our contacts, whoever the contact is for that particular ticket request, only gets one survey every 20 days. We have some folks that are very high growth companies that we're working with on multiple tickets, throughout every week. But it asks 4 simple questions. Rate us a 1 to 5 on response, on quality of the work or resolution, rate the support team members that you worked with, and rate us on whether you would recommend IT Squared to others. And it does have a free form section, so that if they choose to add some additional comments, certainly they can do that. We've had this system running for nearly 4 years, and our overall rating in each category is 4.87 or higher. And the point is that you want a feedback loop, and that's simple and gets paid attention to. And so they should be able to talk to you about how they're doing that and what their current ratings are, and show you the reports from that. Next, do their technicians arrive on time and dress professionally? There's nothing worse than having someone show up in your office looking like they just crawled out of bed. I've seen this myself with telecom carriers and people, coming to our business, technicians from other businesses. And you should expect that the technicians to be true professionals and people that you'd be proud to have in your office. They dress professionally and they show up on time. And if they can't show up for whatever reason to a scheduled appointment, that you're notified immediately. Things do happen, but communication is key here. We believe that these are really minimum requirements for delivering a professional service. Number 5, do they consistently and proactively offer new ways to improve your network's performance, or do they wait until you have a problem to make recommendations? Here you should be having periodic review meetings, again, minimally annually, for them to look for new ways to help you improve your operations, lower costs, increase efficiencies, and resolve any problems that may be arising. These out of the review meetings, that's a time to discuss longer range plans, certainly with the day-to-day interaction that they should be having with your staff, with your network. There's going to be a recognition of ways to improve through technology. We're technology professionals. Those are things that are much easier for us to see because we're exposed to so many different types of operations. And so, just through knowing the technology and what it can do and seeing how those efficiencies can work for businesses, if it's obvious, it should be being brought up to you proactively. Do they provide a detailed invoice that clearly explains what you're paying for? I don't know about you, but I personally hate getting an invoice that says services rendered. If you're on a managed care plan that doesn't cover all things, first, you should be notified that there is work needed that won't be covered and what the anticipated fee is going to be. And then when it's invoiced, the invoice should have enough detail for you to know what it is you're being billed for. A ticket number that you can reference back with a brief description of what the problem was, the findings and the fix, and of course the amount of time that was spent. Do they have adequate errors and omissions insurance, workers' compensation insurance, as well as cyber liability insurance to protect you? Here's something to consider. If they cause a problem with your network that causes you to be down for hours or days or to lose data, who's going to be responsible? Here's another question to consider. If one of their technicians gets hurt at your office, who's paying for that? In this litigious society we live in, you better make darn sure that whomever you're hiring is adequately insured with both errors and omissions and insurance and workers' compensation. And today, even the cyber liability policies are so important because obviously, as you know, as an IT support firm, we have what's considered administrative access into your network. We have a responsibility to protect that information, to make certain that no one is going to get through us to get to you. And just a quick little true story. A few years ago, Geek Squad, I'm sure you've all heard of Geek Squad, was slapped with a multi-million-dollar lawsuit from customers for bad behavior by their technicians. In some cases, their techs were accessing, copying, and distributing personal information that they gained access to on customers' PCs and laptops that were brought in for repairs. And in other cases, they lost the client's laptop and obviously all of their data along with it and tried to cover it up. And so the bottom line is make sure that the company that you're hiring has proper insurance to protect you. And do they guarantee to complete projects on time and on budget? You know, again, all projects should be fixed price and guaranteed to be completed within a certain time frame. That should all be in writing, should have a clear statement of work. This is important because in some cases you may find that somebody wants to do a project that's kind of open-ended, and those very quickly can end up with scope creep, and you end up feeling like you're nickel and dime on the project itself. Number 9, do they insist on remotely monitoring your network? So as you noticed, I didn't cover this in the front, but we're going through a couple different categories here. The first was customer service. We're moving into the maintenance of your network, and these questions will be related to that. Number 9, do they insist on remotely monitoring your network 24/7, 365 to keep critical security settings, viruses definitions, and security patches up to date and prevent problems from turning into downtime, viruses, lost data, and other issues? Absolutely, this is core fundamental. I highly recommend that you do not consider any type of a support agreement where monitoring is not in the fundamental package. It is impossible really to do anything proactively without the monitoring, so that's absolutely core. Do they provide you with a monthly report that shows you all of the updates, security patches, basically shows you what they've been doing? This should happen on a monthly basis. The systems that are used for the monitoring, that in conjunction with the ticketing systems and all of the other monitoring that happens, you should know that your systems are up to date. You should know you have an asset list. You should know that your backups are running and have been checked and tested. Number 11 is a standard procedure for them to provide you with a written network documentation or secure portal accessing secure portal access detailing what software license. Basically, this is asset management for you, and this is the documentation that is fundamental, again, of any professional services firm that in order to professionally manage your network, this stuff has to be documented. In order for other folks within the organization, and this will be a question coming up, to be able to back up that primary engineer that is responsible for your network, things have to be documented, and it needs to be in a place where you have control of that, not just the IT provider. You need to be able to have control of that. You need to be able to know where that is and have access to that information at will. Do they have other technicians on staff who are familiar, again, with your network in case your regular technician goes on vacation or gets sick? Again, this is where documentation is key, and they should be able to explain to you how they handle that process. When they offer an all-inclusive support plan, is it truly all-inclusive, or are there gotchas and hidden things in the fine print? Really, if there's super fine print, I would ask why. I know there's a lot of information that you have to get into a contract so that everybody's covered, but at the same time, they can be written in a way that it's easy to understand. You don't need a magnifying glass to read it, and it's very clear, again. So one of the more popular service plans offered by consulting firms today is the all-inclusive or the all-you-can-eat. These are actually good things because they'll save you a lot of money in the long run. However, again, as I said, you want to make sure that you really understand what is and is not included in this. Some things to consider in here is the phone, email, help desk included or extra? What about network upgrades, moves, adding or removing users? Is the hardware or software included? You know, things like on the backup system or the firewall. There's hardware included in that, but there's also software in both of those. And is that included? What about third-party support, software support? You know, here this can get sometimes a little dicey to try and manage this. You have a third-party software application. It's very common for the software vendor to try to push back to the IT things that should be covered under their contract. And the time that gets consumed in that, you need to know whether or not that is going to be part of your existing contract with the IT service provider, or if that's something that's going to be billed outside of it, you know, given some extenuating circumstances. And again, it's very easy to make that very clear in the contracts, and know where you stand with that. The other point that I'd like to make here is that if something is not included in the contract, your expectation should absolutely be that if something comes up that's not going to be included, that you're made aware of it before the work begins. And that way you have the option, and you know moving forward that there's going to be additional charges coming. So no surprises there. If you aren't happy with their service, do they offer a money back guarantee? You know, here again, you know, if they're not delivering on their services, there needs to be a financial penalty from them back to you, and then agreements on how you're going to move forward. If the hardware and software is included, what happens if you cancel the contract? That's important to know. In a lot of cases, again, you know, you're talking, even for a small client, you're talking several $1,000s in hardware that the IT service provider may be bringing in to do the support. What happens if 12 months down the line you decide this isn't a right fit? What am I going to do? Do you have to now go out and replace all of that? Again, this is handled in different ways. Some folks will give you an amount of time to replace that. They'll give you a buyout option on the hardware that they put in. What should be very clear is what that termination plan is and how they're going to work with whoever is taking over services for you should you choose to go another route. And if you have a major disaster, is restoring your network included, or is that extra? And what about on-site support calls and as such? Do they insist on monitoring the off-site as well as on-site backups? This backups are fundamental again, and absolutely they should be monitoring those. They should be doing test restores on those at least weekly. If you don't know right now the answer to this question that's highlighted here, I highly encourage you to ask whoever's you're working with today, and know without a shadow of a doubt in any given situation, just think of a couple different scenarios. The most benign, somebody accidentally deletes a file, to my server crashes, to somebody steals my server. We've seen that happen. To the other natural disasters that could happen. The building burns down, a tornado, something of that nature. You need to understand for yourself how your systems are set up to protect you in any one of those situations. Do they insist on doing the periodic test restores? This is fundamental. You absolutely do not want to just rely on monitoring and the software that's out there. There has to be a test restore to know that the software is actually functioning. And again, this should be done at least weekly. And I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, so quickly run through these last ones. Do they insist on backing up your network before performing any type of a project? This should be standard practice. If they're doing an upgrade to something, back up the configuration that they're working on, because if something goes wrong during that upgrade and they don't have the original configuration to fall back to, it could mean extended outage time. And here, 17, if you were to experience a major disaster, do you have a written plan for how your data will be restored, how fast this falls in line with question 14? And to ask them how they monitor privileged accounts and who has access to your systems. Escalating privileges is a common technique for external attackers, but inside threats can also loom large for your data. You want to make sure someone is auditing this regularly and has notifications set up for new admin level account creations, as well as asking about their process to maintain and review the logs. And technicians maintaining their certifications. This is very, very important. This is industry, as we all know, has technology is moving at an ever rapid pace, and so to stay on top of these things, there has to be time budgeted. Otherwise, people are falling behind too quickly. And if something goes wrong with your internet service, here again, I would really encourage that they be part of that process where they're going to work with those providers and help shortcut the resolution for you. Are they familiar with and can they support your unique line of business applications, as we talked earlier? Again, this really, your IT support company should be a point person for you, where you don't have to get in the middle of that. They can work with these folks. Everybody speaks the same language. It makes the resolution go much faster. And if they need to get involved on something on the network side, this is identified very quickly, rather than the software provider telling one of your folks that, and then they have to call the IT provider, and then it just turns into a much more lengthy process. And finally, do they have the business acumen to think beyond speeds and feeds? This should become apparent during the sales process. Your conversation should be more about your business, the challenges that you're faced with, and your key initiatives. The technology, albeit an important one, it is a tool, and it's designed to help you really achieve your goals. So they should be able to sit down and talk with you from a business perspective and understand initiatives, and then they're thinking and engineering in their mind how they can help you achieve those initiatives. All right, I know we're running right to the top of the hour, but Alex, if we have a few questions, we're happy to take those.
Yes, we do. We have a couple of questions that came in, and I appreciate it, Kris. It was actually very informative. We have a lot of comments that people were really enjoying this webinar in particularly. So the first question is, I'm going to ask this question because I've asked around my area, but no one has heard of this regulation. I received a warning that the Department of Defense will be requiring all construction contractors to comply with the NIST SP 800-171. My IT contractor has no idea what is required under this new regulation. Have you heard of it? We need to have it. Oh,
yes, I have that. We happen to be in an area here in Dayton, Ohio that has, we have a military base here. We have many businesses, private businesses that work with the base. So we have defense contractors here. And so manufacturers, construction, obviously defense contractors. This is a widely publicized regulation that is now being really much more enforced. And we hit in December 31st of 2017 was the deadline for folks that fall under this compliance requirement to be compliant or submit areas of where they're not compliant. And there are several sections of the NIST 800-171 that have then different controls under that. And I will be happy, whoever asked that question, I'll be happy to send an email that outlines what these are, and it breaks it down into different categories. But essentially, it's about, in all regulatory compliance kind of falls around these three things, to where you've got confidentiality, you've got integrity, and you've got availability of your data. So that's what these controls are all about, is making sure that you have confidentiality of the data, that especially the data that you are responsible for in working with that contractor. There's integrity to that data, meaning that it's available, it's secure, and then availability means if something happens to the machines and devices and all of that, that the availability of that data it doesn't disappear. They're not going to spend money with a contractor and then all of a sudden lose all of the work that has been done should they have a hardware failure or some other event that's going on. And in total, I don't remember the exact number, but I believe it's 110 controls that fall under NIST 800-171 that relate to IT, and it's not just technology. There's an awful lot that's policy and procedure, but it's all related to how you implement, how you control the access, how you protect the information in your own organization and the access to that information, through employees, other contractors, and so forth.
Wonderful. We have another question that came in. This viewer asks, should the agreement include an explicit NDA and confidentiality language?
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Most definitely. In most cases, as an IT services firm, we're not looking at your actual data. We're maintaining the space in which your data lives and making sure that you have access to that data and helping you control who has access to that data, keeping your systems up and running. But there obviously are going to be times when, a given circumstance that we may see confidential information. And there absolutely should be an agreement that it's mutual. It's it's a two-way street. That is expected. Another thing to expect in a contract is essentially what's considered a non-compete. This is very common in a lot of contracts, to where the IT provider is agreeing not to recruit recruit away any of your employees, and they're asking for like in turn, to where they bring in an engineer and the expectation is not that you're going to recruit that engineer out from under them. We invest heavily to hire high quality people, and the goal is to keep folks on long term, because again, there's heavy investment into them. Clients don't want to see engineers rolling in and out. Where that's a red flag, right? That something's going on in the organization. So most definitely, I would recommend that you see that.
Wonderful. And we have time for one more question that came in. The question states, what are all the certifications we should look for?
Yeah, there are a host of certifications out there. There's Microsoft certifications, and then there's specific product certifications that people have. A conversation with folks to understand what part of their business are they allocating, what are they budgeting from an engineer's time for training. This kind of falls back to how do you keep your folks trained. They should have a plan around that. And so there should be, A+ certification, Network+ certification, out there. That just says that their engineers have the fundamental baselines out there that, they understand networking, they understand computers. Then, you've got Microsoft certifications, and in a lot of cases, you can have somebody with some great experience and great training. Just because somebody has a certification, I will tell you, most definitely does not make them qualified to come and do all things on your network. We have witnessed that countless times. That just because somebody had a slew of Microsoft certifications, and the way that we've seen networks configured, servers configured, one, totally against Microsoft's recommendations, but in a manner that isn't really serving the customer. So you really want to just understand, how are they investing? What's their mindset around training their people? What are they looking for? We do a pre-employment network assessment or network evaluation, network knowledge evaluation of our engineers. So we get a baseline of, hey, you have to be at least this level. And so they need to be able to talk about that, maybe go through, show you, what is that assessment? What's their hiring process look like? How are they reviewing that? How are they setting their folks up for training? And again, what are they budgeting for their techs, and in the realm of training and staying up to date on the platforms? And one other note on this is that what you'll find most of the time with your IT service providers is that they're going to standardize. They're going to standardize on backup and disaster recovery platforms. They're going to standardize on different firewall platforms. They're going to standardize on antivirus. And, have a conversation, understand how they go through the due diligence of selecting what those platforms are and how they work with those manufacturers to be able to support those systems, and then the training that they go through on those individual systems. Most of the manufacturers, for anything that's really considered business grade, require the partner, so to speak, to be certified on their product before they'll allow them to sell it and support it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kris. Would you mind sticking up the slide that has your contact information on it? That way people can jot down your information.
Here we go.
Wonderful.
Great. Well,
all right, and go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you, everybody. I know we ran a little bit long. I certainly hope that you find this content helpful, and I am open to a conversation. So as a fellow tab member, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to have a conversation and answer any questions that you have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kris. I really appreciate it. It was very informative. And from the looks of the comments, people were very impressed and really enjoyed this. Just so everybody knows, Kris's presentation and the video of the presentation will be emailed out to each and every one of you by the end of the day today. So you will have those in hand. Also, you can check out all of our previous BOSS webinars on demand by visiting our website and clicking on webinars. Make sure to join us on April 18th for a webinar featuring sales as the topic. And thank you everyone again for joining today, and I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.